This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcast system. This is only a test.
James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast. He speaks to the geeks and the musical freaks, but sometimes popular but mostly a freak because he's James McMahon Music Podcast. James McMahon Music Podcast.
This concludes this test of the emergency broadcast system.
So you were just saying you couldn't get out of bed. Why couldn't you get out of bed?
Oh, because I'm lazy. Okay. And I'm hungover.
Okay. Okay.
And it's my day off. So I thought, I was going to go to the studio and do it because I've got interviews all day. So I was going to do it from the studio, and then I thought, no, fuck it, give yourself another half hour in bed. And then I came and didn't have Google Chrome or Zoom installed, and I couldn't remember my password. You know how it is.
The modern world, man. I have to say, I'm not really this kind of guy. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this when we talk more, but I'm not really the kind of guy that like I don't ever feel kind of crushed by the world, right? Like I've had some mental health problems in my life, but it's never really been depression. But there have been a few instances this week where the weight of the world has made it quite difficult to get out of bed.
Right.
But you're saying it's more just that you overindulged last night?
Well, no, if we're going to be candid, then, I mean, I overindulged last night because the way the world is fucking well on top of me. And I'm finding it more and more, I've less energy, and I spend a lot more time in bed than I ever have done in my life at the moment. Like, it was a mixture of both. I was out with James Skelly last night. We have, it's nice to have a catch up with him, and
you
drank so much, but like,
I don't really drink unless I'm with certain friends, and then all of the kind of boundaries that you set up in your life come down, and you're kind of free. I do love that. I mean, I should say that I've been a fan of your music for years, like right through the choral, and then when you went out on your own. But I've always kind of felt like quite an affinity with you, because from the outside looking in, it was clear that you were a incredibly talented musician and songwriter, but that you found, and not without good reason, you found how ridiculous the music industry can be, difficult, and needed to find a different route. And I say all this to say that I have OCD. That's my...
Yeah, okay.
That's what's made my life difficult. And with that, there's been a lot of things that are a little bit like agoraphobia, but my granddad had agoraphobia, and he was,
Right.
So I've sort of related a bit to
the
story, I mean, it's difficult at these times because you feel like you need art more than ever, but it feels like the people who make art are maybe more predisposed to finding this moment difficult.
Yeah, it is interesting, that, isn't it? I mean, God bless us, really. The listeners and the musicians. I mean, I agree. It's hard to know whether life is more challenging now, or or we're just sort of worn out. I mean, I think the last 5 years have been especially fucking stressful, haven't they? I mean, that's, the pandemic.
I might add about another 5 onto that.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Let's sort of try and shape this a bit. So, this record, it was your first record in 5 years, which is interesting given that you just said 5 years. And it felt like, even for someone who has found things difficult, it felt like that period of time got very difficult. Would you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, man, fucking hell. So there's a big blur over the last particularly the last 5 years, from 2018, 19 to now, is so really is. I can't really remember a great deal. Something started going. I was doing quite well mentally. Around yawn, I was doing well. My drinking was under control. My agoraphobia, I was sort of, I was able to do things. I was playing shows without Valium, and something started to go wrong. Often with these episodes, whatever you call them, there's just one morning things are a bit different, and sometimes it passes, and sometimes it doesn't. And then I fell in love with someone who turned out to be a very bad person to fall in love with. It was amazing at the start, and then they were in London, so me getting down there was hard. I put a lot of pressure on myself, beat myself up, started taking Valium more regularly to get down to London. That spiraled, and that sort of has now got a hold on me. And then the pandemic, and I felt like I was losing touch, losing control. And then when that pandemic happened, I just went fucking batshit crazy. So like the first lockdown was just raging alcoholism and lots of drugs, really. And then that relationship ended, and I needed it to, I thought that'd help, and I just got worse. It got worse and worse. And I largely feel like I'm out the other side of it, but I still have issues with Valium, and drinking way more than I ever have done.
Is that what agoraphobia is about? Control?
My agoraphobia is 20 years old for a start, right?
Yeah.
When it started, the way I view it now is when it started, I feel like these were somatic memories of a trauma. It's being alone and not having anyone there to save or protect. And then, because it didn't get dealt with, I mean, the thinking and the treatment of it then is so radically different to how it is now. Yeah. Like this is sort of back then, panic attacks, it was avoidance. Keep your mind occupied, do a crossword, do your breathing and things like that. But now it's very much like, oh, you have to let this thing happen and pass through your body so the brain can stop fearing it. And this is the sticky point. I spent 10 years avoiding them and doing what I was told, so I didn't have a panic attack. And now, now it's all of a sudden like, oh no, you're meant to let this happen, Bill. Go out and have a panic attack. It's like, that's been the worst part of my life for 10 years. And you want me to now go out and do it, and I just can't, I can't. I've tried with the therapy to go and exposure therapy, and I just cannot fucking do it. And it just takes me to some other place that I just will not go into,
I mean, I will say that the treatment for OCD is, it's CBT, but it's also, there's a thing called ERP, which I think is a bit what you're describing. Exposure response prevention is what the acronym means within OCD treatment, but it's basically exposure therapy. And I will say this, when I was a kid and I first started having these problems, it really was, I didn't really have much guidance, and it was trying to work it out myself. And I think intuitively I kind of realized that if I kind of went towards my fears, if I went towards my obsessions, if I actually did kind of go cold turkey with the compulsions, then actually I probably would feel better long term, because it's a bit like just not scratching an itch, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
obviously on a very extreme level.
Yeah.
But it is crazy that actually you are taught. I mean, it's easy for me to say this because I'm on the other side of a computer screen, and I don't know anything about your life. But I will say that when I learn, as traumatic as it is, when I learned that when I was affirmed that it was like, go do the things that are difficult for you, it has made it better.
Well, I mean, I believe that that's the right course. But even in my instance, it's I have books about why the brain why it likes you to do that. The brain, it doesn't like anything, but it's just sending me adrenaline because it's used to me being fucking terrified, and that can be changed. And I know people who have overcome agoraphobia with this technique. EMDR also very good for, but I just fucking can't do it, and it kills me. It really, it's every time. Like, so I can go out, yeah, but once or twice a week, I'll leave the house and I'll be outdoors and I will just fucking crumble. And I'm 40 years old and I have to go home, I have to walk back into the house, sit down, fucking cry, see if anyone can give me a lift or take a Valium. There is no, this started when I was 21, I'm 40. It's become secondary. It's become a secondary compulsion. I'm medicated for obsessive rumination, and I know I have ADHD. These are things that weren't even considered when I had my breakdown, because it was panic attacks.
Yeah.
Panic attacks. Teenagers have panic attacks. You're smoking too much weed, they'll stop. That was what I was told. And it's not like that.
I don't want to prod around at your trauma because.
Oh yes, you do.
No, I honestly don't. No, I think. I think from what I know about you, I think something happened to you that is worse. Is one of the worst things I think could ever happen, and I think that I can. Again, I sit here. I'm not that kind of journalist. I'm not like, let's prod at this, but I sit here and I hear you talk about the things that you find difficult, and it makes perfect sense. Like, I don't know how any psychologist couldn't go, okay, this thing happened to Bill when he was a kid. Well, this is obviously explains everything.
That's what has been happening for the last 10 years is, textbook. It's just a textbook situation. But that fucking textbook doesn't have a fucking answer in it that works for me. That's all, Maybe if I had more, time, if things weren't so precious. So I can't go out and have an anxiety attack now because I've got shit to do.
Yeah,
shit to do tomorrow. If I have one today, then the next week or two, I'm going to be a wreck, and I go on tour in 10 days.
Yeah.
It cannot happen.
The people say to me all the time, they're like, "Why do why's the podcast spew out so many episodes?" And I'm like, "Well, if I stop, then I think."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, I get it, and also I think it's weird with OCD. I've got friends who just started having friends who I know with OCD from my support group who just started having kids, and that was a real achievement for them because they just thought that their lives would never look like that. But actually, having another life, having a human that you've got to keep alive,
yeah,
actually sort of keeps them on track in a sense. It is.
I've thought that myself. I've thought like if I'd have had kids, maybe I wouldn't be because I'm aware some of this is self-obsession. Like I'm absolutely, yeah, I'm obsessed with my trauma. It's clearly I am. I mean, I write about it. It's my whole life. You know, I still live in the area. Do you know what I mean? I haven't done anything to really move past it. I very much sit in it and live in it. You know what I mean? And I feel like, yeah, maybe if I had a kid, it would just give me a jolt. You know?
Well, it's not too late to have a kid.
No, but you've also got to think, should I have a kid? You know?
Oh,
And
God.
that's not a reason.
Don't do that. I've been thinking that for years.
Well, that's not a reason to have a kid.
No.
And there's so many unwanted kids in the world. The world's fucking grossly overpopulated. You know what I mean? Like, do I, you know, and also, can I? You know, what if it didn't work? What if I had a kid and I couldn't walk it to school? You know what I mean? Or I couldn't beat my addictions. And you can't roll that fucking dice, you know? If I had a partner and they got pregnant and they loved me and they were like, we can do this together, I would. But you know, so can't have a kid on the road.
Also, your songs on the new record, they've been living in my head for, you know, since the day that record came out. And you are clearly a man with all of the love to give. I mean, that's a gift to a kid.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
I guess my other sort of amateur psychology when it comes to your music is that, you know, you write about West Kirby so much. You know, it almost feels like you write about your home space, and I wonder whether a bit of that is, you know, because
I don't leave.
Well, almost
agoraphobic, lad.
Well, almost that you're kind of making your home as big as possible to you to compensate for, almost like finding it hard to go further than that.
It makes sense. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that makes sense, and absolutely. You know, it's that Eddie Murphy thing. You know, when he was a kid, he was writing comedy. All he could write about was shit and fart jokes because that's all he knew.
Yeah,
and this is all I have. You know, and
I've been to West Kirby. There's nothing shit and farty about West Kirby. It's a very
no, you misunderstand.
No, I know you mean. I mean facetious.
Oh, sorry, lad. Sorry, I'm over his foot. No, it's fucking and it's lovely. You know, it is lovely. But I would, you know, I'd like to move one day. You know, I would like. So I think when my parents drop, that might be the time to go. You know.
Where would you go?
Well, it wouldn't be in England, if I can tell you that much. This place is getting me down. Europe, man, I love Europe. France, southwest France, maybe.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Yeah, man.
I also wonder how much you do, you know, because, you know, for someone that finds it difficult to leave the house, like, you've made loads of records, you've worked with loads of bands, you've played with loads of bands. And again, I see a bit of myself in that, where I'm a bit like, this thing you've got, these difficulties you have, I'm talking about myself here, as almost, I'm so scared of like not getting as much as I can do out of my life that actually it's a bit like you really go at things because you don't want to have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, it's really true. I was thinking only the other day that I do it for two reasons. I write the music because it makes me happy and it helps me understand something about melody, something about the confinement of. So I work on melody first, and that harnesses how much I can say, you know? So like, I like you, I'm sure, it's a constant noise of thoughts and intrusive, well, maybe not you, I don't know, but constant intrusive thoughts about all kinds of things. And I'm very overwhelmed by the noise in my own head and the internal monologue. And having a melody, which I know is good, I somehow innately know that melody can't change. It limits just some of the noise. It can only be whatever I say has to fit in this little window, you know?
Yeah.
That makes me extremely happy because it fills my brain with positive things to think about. But there is an equally powerful part, which is basically saying, look at me, you know? It's just, look at me and tell me I'm good, you know? And I think I've been doing that since I was fucking 7 years old, you know. Again, textbook, it makes sense. Lose an older brother, family are absolutely devastated by it. And you're, you know, even though my parents are wonderful, you are largely like fucking still here, you know? And I wonder how much of it is that, you know, it's just trying to live up to some competition I've created, you know, that doesn't really need to be there, you know.
I mean, how is that working? I mean, is it helping that anyone who's got a decent set of ears is pretty delirious about this record?
Well, this is it. Weirdly, I know the record's good. I knew it was good when it was finished. I knew it was the best thing I'd done in a long time. And I thought people always say nice things about my records because my records are good and they're honest, and I do something that not many people, it's not easy to do what I do, you know, like to talk about yourself in that way without it being woe is me, without it being romanticized, and without it being too directly about me. It's a craft that I'm very proud of. So I was expecting good words, but when it came out, I just remember saying to Liam, my best friend, the day it came out, I was like, mate, I thought I'd be happy, and I'm just not. Just hasn't made. It just should have made me happy, and what the fuck's wrong with me?
Yeah, but again, that's external validation. You know, it's that thing of I've had that so many times. Like this will fix it, and
yeah,
it's got to come from within without sounding like a cliche.
It does. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's got better in the months, you know, in the weeks after the album. You know, of course, when people pick up on the things that I really meant with the record, this is the first time that's happened. With you know, people have often said nice things about the songs, but I did a lot in this record that I thought about and was really proud that I executed. And even in the 2 interviews today, you know, when someone picks out a small thing on the record that they really wanted to talk about, and it's something I labored over forensically, then you're sort of like, okay, that's not just they like the song. People are understanding that, you know, why I made a decision. It's nice to know that I'm now at the point where I've got this body of work where people who like what I do can see how, you know, it makes sense. And how to say it? How would I put this? That I've got a style that's growing. You know what I mean? And it is very signature to me. And that really is nice. And so that's very true. But you are right. Of course, it has to come from within. But
I mean,
this is the problem. This is the problem for many people. Is many people that I know as well, which is as great as the world is, it's constantly fucking hard work. It sometimes feels impossible to be happy in any meaningful way. Like, I have a lot of fun, you know, I have great laughs with my mates, you know, I love comedy, but to be content is rare. And I was for about 2 months with the girl that I wrote this album about, and it was the happiest I've ever been. And when that goes, it's just, you don't know where you're going to get it from again, you know. So that's the challenge. But I mean, that's life, isn't it? That's what being a human is. It's the constant battle of the madness, this strange fucking ball that we're on, you know.
Yeah.
Existential fucking issues, you know.
I mean, it sounds a bit. I just want to put a pin in that and just sort of pull it back slightly. Like, it sounds a little bit like, you know, almost like you sort of saying about looking for the degree of your music making, which is about, hey, I'm here, you know, notice me. It almost feels a little bit like there's also part of you that wants to be understood, or that people are sort of getting you right, they're perceiving you correctly, because that's almost like, you've almost described a bit like your music or this record almost being a bit like a test. Like, are you paying enough attention? Have you noticed this? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, maybe subconsciously, like, maybe.
Because there's almost like characters in these songs that have appeared before, right?
Yeah. And this is because I love writing. Like, I love, like I said before, I love comedy. I get so much joy out of working out how someone is funny, how they've written a joke. You know, the setup, misdirection, double misdirection, punchline, and then, you know, jokes are perfect for that. A joke can end and be referenced later on in a set, and, you know, I think this is it creates a oneness that you know, you know, the thing that I loved about the Coral was that we had a world. You know, it was that the first album is a world. All my favorite albums are worlds. They didn't exist before. They happen. They soundtrack your life for however many years, and you can always turn to them, you know. And I think with Yehida, me bringing back certain people, it wasn't always for this idea of you know, like, say for example, Anthony. Thankfully for Anthony, that wasn't. I was trying to link this album to A Bad Wind Blows My Heart, but it just so happened that my friend Anthony, who has a song about him from 10 years ago, did something incredibly important for me when I was making this album. So, and that's what I do. I write about things that are happening. And I'm just lucky that some of the people have stayed, you know, stayed in my life.
He took you to hospital, right? When you, when you'd, well, how would you describe it? That you
took a shitload of bad Xanax.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Are things totally over with you and your ex-partner?
Yeah.
I will say this, you know, I always feel really strange talking about this, but I always feel really strange, kind of, I can never work out how to say this, but like, one of the biggest differences in my life was when I met my wife, because I just remember being like, well, I'm never going to meet anyone because I'm just too ill. My head just doesn't work properly.
Yeah.
And then I met my wife, and I always go, you know, I'm not saying that terrible times didn't happen, because they really did. Like, there were some bad times to come, but I always remember kind of being like, whenever people say, well, what's the best thing that ever happened to your mental health? I'm always like, well, I met my wife. And that always, and I always feel bad saying that, because I always want to go, because it doesn't feel very romantic, you know? It's like, and I feel all those things too, obviously. My wife.
Yeah. But that's that. When you see yourself as someone who's broken because of your issues, and human companionship and the love of another person who accepts you is, of course, going to be high currency. It's going to be so valuable.
How many times do you think you've been in love?
You know, I've never not been in love. Always.
Again, I relate a little bit.
Always in love with someone. Fucking hell. I fall in love very easily. But I don't stay with people just because I'm in love with them. Maybe it's not love. Hard to know. I think my issues with partners is probably because I spend so much time in my imagination that I put so much on people. Like I expect them to be the best thing ever. I think they are when I'm in love, and I completely avoid any red flags, or I'm absolutely blinded. If someone makes me feel happy and feel good about myself, I'm sold. You know what I mean? It has to be intimacy, and it has to be, I have to be attracted to the person. The sex has to be good, and the politics have to be good. They have to be. I can't just fall in love with fucking some beautiful racist who likes me, which is obvious. But
yeah.
But in terms of the big loves of my life, I mean, I've loved everyone equally, but the big relationships, I've had 4 or 5 really important partners, and I'm in touch with a few of them. A few of them it's been okay. Larissa in particular, who I was sort of writing this record for. I can't have her in my life. I crumble. Something about who she is just fucking breaks me. I just give up who I am. I just forget who I am, and I just turn into a complete fucking child, and it's not good for me.
Yeah, I remember having a therapist say to me, I'm not in any way saying that this is similar, but it's just what it made me think of. But I mean, I always try to. I guess I don't see the world as binary as I did when I was younger. You just saying that about politics, like, I know what my politics are, and they're on the left, but I don't really view people in that way so much anymore. Like I've met really decent, kind people who believe things that are very different to what I believe, and but also, so I sort of judge people much more on their hearts, I think, really, than their polemic, which is very different to, I think, what
it's very different to me for a start. I'm terribly judgmental with that stuff. I'm getting worse, actually.
Well, I think the world is forcing it, in a sense. It's like the world is trying to tear us all apart and put us in our own silos. And actually, I feel like trying to find the commonalities between us is...
Well, yeah, of course, I believe that too. I think like the division in the world right now is... I don't actually think it's any worse than it's ever been. I don't think people have always found issues with other people. I think we see it more, and it's a lot closer to home now. But we live in a relatively peaceful time. In the course of history.
Yeah.
No, we haven't had. Like it's not like the Crusades are happening. There's God is still fucking at war with God somewhere. Yeah, fair enough. But I don't think it's any worse than it has been. But yeah, I just know from my point of view. So obviously, I'm a musician, right? And music is a beautiful language that cuts through all differences, and that's why one of the reasons why music and art are so valued and needed. but I definitely am becoming more cantankerous and less tolerant to views that I think are inappropriate. You know, I'm quite a prick about it, really. You know, so got, you know, so the only person I've really got time for, who, you know, my father votes differently to me. Let's put it that way. Now I know I'm a white middle class. Well, yeah, I'm definitely white and definitely middle class. Liberal. Godless liberal. My dad votes the other way. He has challenging thoughts. You know, I disagree fundamentally with so many things that he thinks, but he gets a pass because he's my dad, and I've had the arguments with him. I've had the argument about, Dad, no one's calling you cisgender, but don't worry about it. Like, you're just, I'm not anything, Bill. I'm not cis. I'm just normal. Yeah, I know. Yeah, fine. But other people like to have definitions for themselves that fits them. I've had that conversation with him, but anyone else who has got sort of opposing views on things that I think are innate truths, I sort of don't really have much time for anymore. But maybe that's just because I'm fucking spend all my time in this flat with all them books.
Well, no, I just think it's a thing of like, I'll always remember when I came really close to the edge with my OCD, and one of the people who pulled me back from the edge, was a Tory, like they believe things. They see our country in a shade of blue that is so far away from how I see the country. I almost feel like the politics, not so much sort of small C conservatism. There's little bits about that I think are really interesting, but the Tory party, the ideology of the Tory party, I literally almost see that as like a mental illness. I see that as worse than like what me and you have. Like, I actually think that viewing the world in the way the Tories view the world or the country is a mental illness, and yet this guy, probably saved my life, And I think there's that thing of like it just made me see people in a much more nuanced way. But
in fairness, that's quite an extreme thing to happen. Someone saves your life. It's just incredibly powerful. So you are, of course, you're going to think about, well, maybe people aren't their politics, and of course they're not always. But I agree with you. I see it as a mental illness too. Well, not quite a mental illness. I see it as something fundamentally wrong in someone who can believe that shit. They can believe that the way the class system is fair, and the way and I can't. If someone saved my life, if a Tory saved my life, it'd still be like, oh, thank you for saving my life, but your politics are still fucking shit, and we can't be friends because I can't talk to you. I can't have arguments with people. I hate arguing with people, and it's the same. Like, I got to say it. Like, I feel the same about the religious. Everyone's entitled to their God, but I can't be in a room with someone and have a serious conversation if they believe that there's a bush that burnt forever, or that Jesus came back to life, or that Muhammad flew up to the fucking moon on a silver horse, right? I could speak to people like that and have a fine conversation about something we have in common, but I couldn't spend a lot of time with someone who I think is so sees the world in such a different way that they can believe something like that. That sounds really harsh when you say it out loud, and I'm not saying that I hate the religious.
Yeah.
I actually wish, I wish I could have a God, or I wish there was at least one that didn't seem like a complete vindictive fucking cunt.
Well,
And I could,
yeah,
and
but
I could,
this is the uncomfortable truth that no one wants to talk about when it comes to God. Is that for me, there's so clearly a God, right? Like, I don't ever doubt that. I never wake up. I never wake up and think that we're not weird, but like life creation is an accident. I just cannot accept it in any way. But I think about Rwanda. I think about the Holocaust. I think about Serbia in the 90s. I think about all of these. I mean, I'm not praying to anyone. I'm not praying to anyone who let that happen on their watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know what I mean? It's just like,
yeah. I mean, there's a great Christopher Hitchens quote, and I'll think of him what you will, and his views on some of the wars.
Oh no, I'm apart from Iraq, I'm a fan.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think his argument with Iraq was sort of bolstered by Serbia. I mean, in his opinion, there was a land grab by a fucking megalomaniac who was using religion to try and create it. And NATO, NATO, UN or US went in and largely sorted it out. The place now is a much better place than it was, and that was interference. And I think he's making that point that these despots should be removed because they're killing people. But I love that quote. He says that, for 99.9% of all things that have lived on this planet have died. Most humans, for let's say, what's he say? So let's say, Homo sapiens sapien first sort of started hanging out together 100,000 years ago, and for 96,000 years, God watches. Well, people die in childbirth, and people die from their teeth mainly. Yeah. And then 4,000 years ago, went, all right, I'm going to send my son to an illiterate part of the world, not China, the Middle East, and now you must, now you must, and I'm meant to believe that this is a good person. How can that be, But I'm unlike you. I'm undecided on. See, I do think it could just be an accident.
No way.
It's a profound thing. We know at some point the cosmic background radiation is going to disappear. So we're not. At some point there'll be no proof of a Big Bang. We know the Big Bang wasn't the start. There was a temperate. There was a whole fucking cosmic soup, they call it, don't they? So we can, in fact, say that some things come from nothing because the evidence of the start at some point will not be here. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
So I can believe, but again, like the idea of a God raises more questions than I think I have time to answer. Like why? Like why is the one?
I mean the problem with this conversation.
Who the fuck are they?
I mean the problem with this conversation, as regular listeners of the podcast will maybe be fearing at this point, is that if we don't stop talking about this, I'm going to start talking about UFOs, which is kind of always where any conversation about spirituality ends up. But for me, anyway. But I do think. Listen, me and you have got enough shit to sort out without trying to work out.
Well, you say that, but I find these things quite comforting, And I do I do like a conversation with someone who has a different view. I'm not saying, like earlier, I'm not saying that I'm not up for a challenge and learning. I do like. I just can't spend a lot of time. I just don't have the patience anymore. I think that's what I was, spent a lot of my life just sort of going along with things. And yeah, you know, people's views are their views, and they're sacred. And, you know, and sometimes you think, actually, some of this shit is fucking appalling. We can't really have it, you know. But hey,
I'm conscious that you've got other interviews today, and
we haven't even talked about music yet, have we?
I know, man. This is one of the longest episodes in a while. When do you? We should do a part 2 at some point if you'd be up for it.
I'll be up for it. Yeah, that'd be nice.
I'll have a word with the powers that be. When do you head out on tour?
The 10th, the 11th of March, 10 days.
When do you play London?
Don't know.
I will find out, and I will come.
Okay.
But yeah, let's do it. Let's do a part 2 at another point, because I feel like we could just go and go and go. But
yeah, no, I'd like that a lot. Yeah.
Listen, Bill, I'm always rooting for you. You've made so much music that matters so much to me, and this record is really. I feel a bit sorry for anyone else who's released a record this year so far, really, because it hasn't really had a look in. So, thank you so much for writing these songs.
Well, I need to say, Yard Act have just posted on their Instagram that they've just released the best album of 2024, and I'm tempted to put my boot and go, I don't think you have.
I tell you what, they're I mean, you know, previous guests on the podcast, but their new songs are sounding really good, actually.
I love the guys. Like I've worked with them. I think that, you know, I adore them. But
yeah,
there's no way their record's better than mine. No fucking way.
love it. Listen, Bill, thanks so much for speaking to me. I'll speak to you again.
Take care, James. Lovely talking to you.
See you.
All the best.
Bye.